Hi there, and welcome to another episode of TheInEVitable. This is MotorTrend's show about the future of the automobile. Where are we going, and how are we going to get there? And today we have on two very cool guests. I've known one of these guys for a while, just met the other one, but they are engineers from Lucid. Lucid Air is our 2023 MotorTrend Car of the Year.
And on this episode, we have David Lickfold and Greg Massey, who are in the Vehicle Dynamics Division at Lucid Motors. David Lickford is the Senior Director of Chassis and Vehicle Dynamics Engineering at Lucid Motors. And Greg Massey is a Chassis Controls Technical Specialist at Lucid. Interesting guys, interesting voices.
And the reason I wanted these two, I wanted David forever because I met him way back when I first started, being a passenger in Lucids before we actually ever drove one. He was around. He took me around Laguna Seca. And then Greg I just met, we had a Lucid Air Sapphire, which you'll hear about in just a second, but let's just say it's a very quick car. But Greg sort of came with the vehicle. He's responsible for, I don't know, not the entire thing, obviously, but like the acceleration of this vehicle.
Greg's the younger guy. He's an Ohio State Buckeye. He is only 2 years at Lucid Motors. He comes from Tesla and then the German supplier Bosch, Robert Bosch, GmbH or whatever, GmbH. And then David is the Brit who will have the very distinctive voice. He should have his own podcast.
Yeah, probably.
David Lickford. He is a 7-month veteran of Lucid. He was been there through the dark times of that company. Formerly, before that, spent about 6 years and change at JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, developing a ton of vehicles, everything from, I sent you a link to it, like XF,
everything,
XKR,
everything, XJ. All that matters,
XJ,
look,
Evoque from the Range Rover side.
All that matters is XJ. With the best driving big car before the Lucid, really. We should have probably brought that up. Anyhow.
These are the guys who make the Lucid Air handle. In large part, they made it our car of the year. Let's just be honest. Like, it's a fine driving 5,200 pound vehicle that doesn't have air suspension for some reason, and they made it go super fast around corners and in a straight line. Oh. Well, they didn't do the straight line piece, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, he did. Greg did.
Oh, Greg
Anyways,
did. Yeah.
Check this one out. You're gonna love this one.
Here we
You're
go.
gonna love it.
David and Greg.
Well, welcome, boys. Good to see you again.
Greg and David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys flew in. It sounds like one of you flew in from England, but you didn't actually. You came in from Northern California. But then, Greg, you came in from Ohio.
Yep.
So this is great. We can you want to break some news? Or
let's do it, baby.
Let's
do it. I don't know if it's going to be breaking news when this airs, but yeah, so as of the other day, the Lucid Sapphire Prototype, so it gets the asterisk, but it's officially the quickest car MotorTrend has ever tested.
How quick? How quick is it, Johnny?
It did the quarter mile in 9.2 seconds, beating the Tesla Plaid by 1/10 of a second. But the trap speed was 157.1 miles per hour, whereas the Plaid was only 152. So it's still accelerating at that point. And we actually ran it out to the half mile, and I think it did something like 14.3 at 187 in the half mile. And I think fastest we hit was 198, and that was on like a dinky runway that was like not quite a mile, so
not quite safe either. It
was totally safe.
Now, as chassis guys, do you guys care at all? You're like, this is so boring. Let's talk about like when you make a turn, or you guys like this is interesting to you, the straight line speed.
I think it's fun, but I'm not the guy who had to do about 10,000 launches. That's this guy right here.
Oh, okay.
So he may have a different story.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of fun. But it does get old. Like if you're doing traction control calibration all day and you're doing, 500 launches, like.
So what does the 500th launch tell you that the 499th didn't?
Or the 250th?
It depends. I mean, like a lot of the times you're trying to figure out, the surface is so important, right? So you've got some amount of time that you need to spend calibrating on a given type of asphalt or whatever, and that might take you 50 launches to tune all the gains and slip targets and stuff like that. But then you also want to make sure that it is robust and works well if it's not perfect asphalt. If it's, you hit a bump in the middle of it, you have like a wet painted line, like all the different possible ways that you could trick the traction control system, you have to check all those different things.
Right. So how many times do you think you launched the Sapphire so far? Because I know it's still.
And did you? Were you involved in that whole validation or getting it out to?
Yeah, I've done probably, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 launches.
So I've done one, and what's funny was I spent the morning doing a regular Lucid Air, the Grand Touring Performance, which by the way does the quarter in 10.0.
Slow, so slow.
Tied. It's in a 4-way tie for 6th quickest car we've ever tested. And that's fast. I somehow am used to that kind of speed. And I did many launches in that and whatever. But the Sapphire did, I don't want to say take my breath away, but it was like, whoa, for that first probably 3 seconds. It's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then maybe it levels out.
And you're saying that gets old?
It gets physically exhausting.
Okay.
I will say, like, after you've done enough of them, you do start to get like a handle of that sensation. To the point where, like, the first one that you do, even if I've, gone and driven a different car for a couple days or an hour or whatever, the first one that I do, it's like kind of a shock again.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you've done a bunch of them in a row, like, you can start to pick out the differences of like, oh yeah, that one not quite as good. This one's really, like, that one is really fast.
Without disclosing any trade secrets or whatever, but can I just ask, what's in the car with you? Like, when we do it, I think we probably had the 20 hertz V-Box
and a laptop,
and a laptop, maybe something. We used to have this contraption that would be in like it took over the floor mat because the lower was easier. Like, when you hit the brakes and the laptop doesn't go flying. Like, what's in it for you guys these days?
It depends on what we're doing. So, our kind of like minimum setup is a laptop and a case that lets us interface with the Ethernet and CAN buses on the car. That lets us get all the different information that the car knows about. And then depending on what you're doing, you might need some, external instrumentation, we'll say. A lot of the times that's a V-Box or something like that. But then sometimes you'll have wheel force transducers, which are basically like strain gauges. That it's an entirely new wheel that has a bunch of strain gauges in it, and it lets you measure the forces, like the 3 axes, X, Y, Z forces, and then moments as well. So that way you can look at if you're doing some state estimation or something, right? You're doing physics models on the car in the traction control system. And you might need to then like correlate that to a known good sensor, basically.
So you actually kind of touched on it there. The cars are, especially the latest software-defined vehicles and EVs. I mean, it's commonly referred to as supercomputers on wheels, but you still need some external sensors. Like, there's not enough computing power and sensors, or it's not measuring the right thing that you actually have to bring along. I was thinking you say like we don't need anything because the car's like better than a V-Box right now. Like no, or
the goal is to make it so that the car can be about as good as a V-Box, right? So you've got all of your different control algorithms, and part of the process that I work on is calibrating those control algorithms and developing those control algorithms so that they can take the place of that external sensor. Obviously, on a car that you're selling a bunch of, V-Box is $15,000, $20,000. Right. You don't want to put a $15,000 or $20,000 V-Box into the car.
Right.
So we develop the controls that use, the much more affordable sensors, we'll say.
Got it.
And take those and create estimates that are as good as a V-Box, basically.
And I think it's also worth remembering that there are things on the car that we measure directly, like wheel speed, for example. We've got wheel speed sensors that count pulses, and we know directly what each wheel is doing. There's other things where we're estimating, like body slip angle, for example. We don't have a direct body slip angle measurement, so we estimate. So we use things like the 15, 20 grand V-Box kits or whatever instrumentation to give us fully reliable data with which we can develop and tune our estimators and then validate them. And then from that point forward, we know we can trust them.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll get into your backgrounds, but David, you have a very long career in automotive. Not, I mean, like the longest we've ever had, but you've done a lot of stuff. You know,
for such a young man.
For such a young man. But I was going to say, can you just we opened this talking about the Sapphire and how fast it is. Can you just contextualize how nuts it is that a car goes that fast that weighs this size? We're not talking. This is not a race car. This is a 4-door.
I had the massage on, by the way, when I did the 9.2. I had the AC blowing and the massage.
What does
on.
the Sapphire weigh?
It's
Roughly.
20. So in kilos,
What are
we
kilos?
can convert
Come
it
on.
into freedom units. But,
Yeah.
2380 something.
That's like 5,200.
Yeah,
or
about that.
something
So this is
like
a
that.
5,000 plus pound vehicle hurling itself through the
Quickly.
quarter mile in, what did you say, 9.2 seconds?
9.2, baby, at 157.
And that's on a non-prep surface.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah,
go
yes.
sub 9 on a prep surface.
We should clarify that for people listening. We're not talking drag racing
Yeah, we don't
in the
cheat.
traditional sense. Yeah. So, but on a prep surface, we assume it would go even quicker.
Yeah.
Probably
It'll
break
do
down
sub
in the
9.
into the eights.
But again, give us some, because again, you worked on a lot of high performance stuff while at your previous employer, Jaguar Land Rover.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we had,
JLR Ed, keep up.
sure, if we had told you back then, if you had somebody, that you know yourself in 10 years said, hey, in like 10 years you're gonna be doing this with something like this, would you be like, get out of here? Like what's the?
Yeah, and I remember back then, quick was an F-Type R or a XKRS GT or something like that, which was mind-blowingly quick and still is stupidly quick.
But those were doing like 12-second quarter miles.
Yeah.
Low 12s probably. Probably not in the 11s.
No, and I distinctly remember when we got a 991 Gen 1 Turbo S in for benchmarking.
Right.
We did a couple of launches in that, and I remember just being disorientated and thinking, how is this thing legal? It just hooks up and goes. There's so much torque. The thing's pretty light.
Right.
And that was probably, 2.8 seconds, 0 to 60, something like that?
Yeah,
I'm
around there.
trying to remember now.
And that was the one, that was Porsche reacting to the Nissan GTR.
Yes.
The GTR showed up and it was like 3.2 to 60.
Tasered everybody.
Yeah.
Ferrari, I got you.
11.7 and a quarter, and it was just like, what?
Yeah.
So
and
that was their reaction to that. Yeah.
And that, I remember thinking at that point, how is this legal? How does anybody want or need this? How do you use this on public road?
Right.
And then of course the Model S came out and became more ubiquitous, and that kind of just took it to a whole different level of performance.
Mm-hmm.
And people somewhat got used to that, as much as you can. But yeah, to now be taking it to a point of sub 2 seconds 0 to 60, it's just you think, well, 3 seconds to 2 seconds, it doesn't sound like that big a change, but as a percentage change, it's obviously huge.
Yeah.
As a what it does to your body change, it's huge.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I ever really looked into the future and extrapolated to this point, but we've got here and it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun.
So again, now we do an intro to this, so we've already explained who you guys are. But again, you guys are the chassis guys. You guys are basically the chassis vehicle dynamics. You are in charge of how the vehicle handles, how it performs, what the driver feels, how the passengers feel.
Well,
when
but
they're
also
going
1,500 launches. You're also in charge of
Yeah.
launching.
So, is there anything that you're particularly proud of from Lucid's lineup in terms of not just straight line speed, but like a handling perspective? What's the equivalent to what we just talked about for the Sapphire in your mind? Like, oh my God, this thing can do. Is it a G number, or it goes? There's a test track you guys have, and it corners faster than anything you've ever done. Or is there anything? like that?
lap time.
Is there something out there that really stands out that like our listeners who are maybe not as familiar with their vehicles would be like, oh, that's curious?
Yeah. Right now, we've started kind of teasing the performance numbers, the straight line performance numbers for Sapphire, like sub 2 seconds 0 to 60, sub 4 0 to 100, sub 9 quarter mile, all on a prep surface. We're excited to get to a point where people actually turn a steering wheel. We're very keen to get to that point. This is, of course, it's a 4-door sedan. It's luxury, as Johnny pointed out. It's got massaged, heated, cooled seats. It's a very comfortable place to go on very long journeys. It has great range as well. So it's not going to be the quickest thing anyone's ever seen on a track. But what we said, both for Sapphire and for all versions of Air, we said, okay, if we're not going to be the quickest and we're not going to win lap time battles necessarily, let's make it really fun. Let's make it really engaging. So we're really excited for you guys and others to start actually doing some on-road stuff, some track stuff. And yeah, we want to hear your feedback. We believe we're onto something special here. We're really keen to get to that point where we start getting your feedback.
Didn't last year at Pebble, our friend the Stig like run it backwards up the corkscrew and like tie a LaFerrari or something like that with the prototype?
He ran, so the reverse corkscrew hill climb was in a Grand Touring Performance.
It wasn't the Sapphire.
Wasn't the Sapphire at that point,
okay,
no.
okay.
So
But he tied a LaFerrari.
It was the quickest production car in the reverse hill climb, and also the quickest production car at the Goodwood hill climb as well over in the UK.
Right.
Right. It's a GTP, as we call it, Grand Touring Performance, is a stupidly good car.
Agreed. Thoroughly tested. Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. Actually, let's put it. We'll bookmark that. I want to come back to the 10 in a row thing.
But you were right. He also drove Sapphire on that day or that group of days, and that was one of our development cars that we call Ruby affectionately, and Frankie as well, which has a cage in it. And it was kind of where the car was at its stage in development at that point. So it wasn't entirely mature, didn't have fully correct hardware, didn't have fully correct software, but it was a flavour of where we were at that point. Yeah, and he gave some passenger rides and showed a few people where we're going and scared a few people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but still. So if you have a car that's tying a LaFerrari, which by the way, I think LaFerrari is still.
I think he said faster then, because it's fastest production car. LaFerrari's a production car.
I think you guys. Well,
whatever.
It was a 100th or so. It was like bang on the LaFerrari time in a 4-door sedan. That weighs 2,000 pounds
Twice
more.
as much.
Well, but probably actually about 1,000 pounds more. But still, my point is, and then like to and LaFerrari. I was looking this up because the fastest cars MotorTrend's ever tested. LaFerrari's still like fourth or something like that, third or fourth. Now Ferrari, of course, they let us test it on downhill only,
right?
Literally, but it was like 9.7 in the quarter mile, something like
that. So okay, so we're going to talk about then. You guys trying to make this thing super fun to drive from a handling, pure emotional aspect. Before we get into how you did that, this is a question actually from one of our testing nerds, Eric Tingwall, who said, what are your personal chassis benchmarks? We'll ask you what you benchmarked for your vehicles for GTP and
well, I would
Sapphire.
say, David, if you could tell that lovely story that I've regurgitated probably incorrectly several times about the GT3 RS.
We'll go to both. Like personal.
No, it's the same question.
Okay,
yeah.
personal
I'm just trying to
benchmarks in terms of handling for you.
As in, which cars have stood out to us through history?
You personally, what do you like? Oh, that's the goal. To deliver that experience.
Yeah. Good question. How long you got? Hour and a half?
Right. Yeah. Go nuts. Here we go.
I will never forget the first time I drove a 911 GT3. That was, again, 991 Gen 1 GT3. Rented it from Turo. Went up to the Malibu Canyons and was just blown away. I thought I knew what a good car was, but that was just redefined.
And that's
for me.
the 0.1.
A 0.1, yeah.
Yes, I've told this story way too many times also, but like I remember I drove that and I wrote a review for MotorTrend for the first test. And I'm like, I don't know how a car could ever handle any better. And then I was like landing in Spain to drive the 0.2, and I pulled up my old review and I started. That was the opening paragraph. So in the review of the 0.2, I was like, well, here's what I said. And then it was like, wow, they made it much better. And then I don't know if you've driven the 992 GT3. But it's like 73% better. It's insane.
Yeah. I actually went the other way with the 992. I prefer the 991, but we'll maybe get into that.
Okay. Did you drive them back to back?
No, I did not.
I did
that.
A few
years
years
between.
Shocking. It's just like you don't have to brake into corners, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It has front end grip suddenly.
Yeah. But 991 Gen 1 GT3 with the PDK and the Malibu Canyons, that was just, I don't know if anything will ever be that. So for me, that kind of, it's a standout, kind of that motor, that transmission, that steering feel, that engagement. That's always going to kind of have a place in my heart and in my brain. We always go back to old BMWs as well. As a team, we talk about this quite a bit. Kind of, you've got 5 cars to choose from all of history, and you can drive nothing else for the rest of your life.
E39 M5.
E39 M5 comes up a lot.
Yeah. First big sedan. Yeah.
Yeah. It hides its mass really well. It's playful. It's engaging. Yeah, it's not the quickest thing ever, especially by modern standards, but so much fun. E36 M3 is like a beautifully balanced chassis, lightweight car. Again, not a load of power, but a near perfect chassis. Yeah. Well, what about you?
Yeah.
So I'm a Honda guy originally.
Nice.
Ohio.
So I have an S2000. That's always up there. First gen, like original NSX, also up there.
That's a tremendously wonderful thing to drive. Yeah. That's about as balanced as a car could ever be.
I've had a couple opportunities to drive those, and definitely up there.
It's remarkable, and then also for something with a roof, like the visibility out is just unparalleled. Still, it's crazy.
Can I just tell you that this is wild to me? Because like the guy with the British accent, I was like, he just went to 2 German cars, like iconic German cars, and then the dude from Ohio went to Japan. Mm-hmm. So I think that's cool.
But hang on, every car they mentioned it would be in like the Hall of Fame of 10 best. I was
expecting a Lotus. I was not gonna lie, or something, something like that. But okay, this is great. Okay, with that in mind, given that
hang on though, we have to pause here. So I was the first person who didn't work for Lucid to drive the Air. I drove the Dream Edition, and then a few months later, I met up to drive a slightly improved Dream Edition. But then David showed up with, I think, just a Grand Touring. It wasn't a Grand Touring performance, but it was shocking. I drove them back to back, and it was like, whoa! Like the steering, like within 10 feet of rolling out of the turnout, was like way better in the Grand Touring. And I was like, what did you do? He told this great story about the GT3 RS. Could I get you to repeat that on the record? Because Ed will like this, I think.
Sure.
Software-defined vehicles, Ed.
I think this plays into, the SDV idea and the power of OTA, over-the-air updates. So we were pretty happy with Air when we launched it. We were confident it was a great car. We hoped you folks would agree and buyers would agree.
I'm going to just butt in again for a second. And I will say, on that drive, we spent 2 days together with Peter driving them. You both were saying, "Hey, there's a new hardware coming for the front end, and it's not ready for the Dream Edition, but it'll be on the later cars."
Yeah.
So that was
and in honesty, the hardware tweak was tiny. It was the smallest of things, but we just had an opportunity to make a little change, and I think 99.9% of even the best drivers wouldn't notice the hardware change alone. The real change came from the software update. So we launched the car. We were pretty happy with it. You had some feedback from a couple of days up on Angeli's Crest, and it kind of confirmed a few things that we'd been discussing in the team as well, saying, how do we think about the front end, particularly on first turn-in? Occasionally the car could just kind of nod a little bit and pitch a tiny little bit. So we revisited our damping control. And because the car has adaptive dampers, and we change our compression and rebound control 500 times per second, we can do pretty much whatever we want with the dampers just like that, quicker than anyone can perceive. So we adjusted our front end control a little bit. We adjusted our compression to rebound balance and our front to rear balance, and just kind of settled the front end a little bit more in those situations, which meant you get just the tiniest bit more grip on first turn in. The car doesn't nod quite as much, it was an improvement, and we were able to roll this out over the air. So customers don't need to take the car anywhere. They're just at home on Wi-Fi or just on LTE or whatever. Oh, update appears, ping, 20 minutes install. You've got the new calibration. Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
What you told me the story, though, where you toured a GT3 RS and went back and forth.
So that was... So the first one was the suspension update. We also have done a few steering updates and brake updates as well. The Touroed, it ended up being a 991 Gen 2 GT3 and the 991 Gen 1 GT3. Sorry, 991 Gen 2 GT3 RS.
Yeah.
991 Gen 1 GT3.
Yeah, okay.
I'm wrapping myself in GT3.
Because everyone listening knows the 991.1 GT3 RS was kind of a mess. It was not good. But the point two, They cleaned it up.
Yeah, and
And
we
no one knows
And
that.
by
but
the way,
it's
you
true.
did this all in Southern California, right? You were touring these vehicles out here.
some in SoCal, some in Northern California.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want the people who are just raging right now, who live in a small town somewhere not California, to you guys can just throw that nonsense just like that. It's like,
I
kind of.
still can't get my head around anyone who puts $250,000 car on Turo, but there
Any
we go.
car on Turo.
Yeah.
I had a Fiesta ST. I was like, maybe, because I wasn't driving. I'm like, no. I'm not going to let anyone touch my car.
But to those people who do, thank you. You've helped us out hugely.
That's right.
But yeah, that story. So we knew we had a certain window to make these changes before the next software drop, and then push to customer. So we rented these cars and basically didn't sleep for weeks on end, just kind of driving each of these rented cars, driving the Lucid, 20 minutes in each, rotate, just making tiny little changes and improvements each time. We held the 911 GT3 in its different generations as kind of the best electric power steering that's out there right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we wanted to emulate that. And yeah, we don't have
Rear steer.
we don't have. I don't think rear steer contributes that much, but we don't have their tire. We don't have their tire to mass. We don't have their. There's a lot of things the 911 has that mean we're not quite going to emulate that steering feel. But if we can get really close to it, then I think we've done a good thing. So we said let's benchmark the hell out of that. Keep making these little incremental changes. And that's how we developed the steering calibration.
Which is your actual this is totally your wheelhouse. ePass. I'm looking at your LinkedIn. You've spent like two years.
It's sort of a spy.
I am. Well, but no. But I mean, electric power steering, electric power assisted steering, ePass as it's known in the industry, is your wheelhouse fully. So okay.
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned OTA and hardware, software, and all these updates. To this day, though, nobody the updates that are coming in over the air and to the software, you're not changing things like caster, camber, what roll. We're not to the point where cars are able to do that, right? Because you would need then some sort of servo or a connection. You can't OTA better turn in through more tow.
Currently, no, but
because you're all 4-wheel drive, you can do fake a little bit of that with wheels.
We can change torque distribution.
Right.
Future vehicles where they have kind of linear actuators instead of a steering gear. If people do that, you could change a lot of your geometry via an OTA update. Cars that will get rear steer or have rear steer and will get rear steer in the future because we think it's going to become more common. That'll become a thing as well. So yeah, we're not changing suspension hardpoints, but there's a lot we can change already today, and it's going to increase.
Do you think future cars will go that direction, where you're going to have linear actuators?
I think where cost allows, yeah. Personally, I think we're moving towards a by-wire future.
Even for steering.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
Just my only experience with it was when Infiniti did that, and it was just awful. It was
Q50S.
Just, yeah, it was. I don't know.
How about we say it was before its time?
It was way before its time. Actually, the funniest thing ever happened, I don't remember this. Remember we got hauled down.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't funny.
We got...
I got yelled at by the head of the current head of marketing. He's not maybe the head of Jeep. But he just ripped me because of another guy who used to do video for us.
But before that, I got hauled into a meeting with Andy Palmer when he was still at Nissan before Aston Martin. And he's like, tell my team what happened. And I'm like, well, this is. And specifically what was really bad was on this one point, I was up on Big Tahunga, I turned the wheel to the right and the car went to the left. And one of the engineers was like, wait, where on Big Tahunga? I'm like, about 4 turns from the stop sign. He's like, oh, yeah, that happened to me. And Palmer was like, and that was the last they ever spoke to me about anything. But
wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was just some weird, I don't know what it was, something that they knew about.
Yeah, yeah. They were, I agree, they were they were ahead of
premature.
Everyone at that point. They had a few challenges, but I think the industry is going in that direction because it allows you to... Things like the intermediate shaft that joins your steering column and steering wheel to your steering rack, that thing's a pain to package. It goes right through the middle of a load of stuff that you don't want things going right through the middle of. Right. There's all kinds of vehicle safety considerations. You have to make sure the thing crashes properly, all kinds of manufacturing considerations. If you can get rid of that even just deleting that one simple component is a massive win.
Sure,
but can you the big thing? No, the big thing about steering is, and even I should know this. Brake-by-wire systems there's still a mechanical failsafe, right? Like if you jam that pedal, if all the wires, whatever EMP happens, you can still stop the car if you slam that pedal down hard enough. And if you lose steering and it's only wires, and this mechanical connection you're speaking of is gone, is there a way to engineer for every potential AI-driven nightmare scenario?
Well, yes. Yeah. So early systems like the Infiniti Q50S had a backup mechanical
It did have a
system
backup,
with a clutch.
Which seemed weird because, like, what's the point then? But
that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
It's a failsafe.
Yeah.
But, no. But the whole point of steer-by-wire is to improve packaging, free up space, not have a giant hole in a firewall, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the functional safety of this, which is kind of looking at the behavior of electronically controlled systems on a vehicle and how they can go wrong, how we make sure they don't go wrong. That is it's a huge field that's popped up in the last 10, 15 years, and it's still growing as everything is moving towards increasingly being by wire. But yeah, there are measures that we can take to make sure that it cannot go wrong. Like we have, even today on the Lucid Air, we have fully redundant, separate 12-volt power rails. If anything happens to one, it does not affect the other one at all. We have fully redundant network communication. Again, if something happens to one, the other one's unaffected. We have dual ECUs on our steering system, which run different microprocessors, different ASICs.
What's ASICs?
Application-specific integrated circuit.
Yep.
Am I getting that right?
Nice.
Had to check that one.
It's also a Japanese brand of running shoe.
ASICs. Yeah.
Very good running shoes.
Yes.
So yeah, there are ways we can make sure that it cannot go wrong, and these are all things that are used in aviation and aerospace already.
Yeah,
so
fair. But I've also like there was what was that famous crash where was not a non-Boeing on an Airbus, so it was steer by wire, and one pilot did this, and the other pilot pushed forward, and the co-pilot who got it wrong, he got his input in first, and so the plane crashed. And if it would have been a Boeing, it would have been like, hey, we're doing two different things, and it was a mechanical connection. Because you're saying nothing can go wrong. Well,
it shows the importance of kind of painstaking design, painstaking testing, validation. We can predict most things in simulation and CAE now. But also we've just got to do millions of miles in these things and prove out that everything is fully as it should be.
Because I expect, like, when, eventually when cars drive themselves, like, what's the point of a steering wheel? So then you could get rid of it. But I think when there's, I don't know. And and as a guy who's singing the praises of, the GT3, like getting rid of the steering rack, column, whatever, like, is that possible? I mean, I guess you're saying it's possible.
I mean, if you can get rid of the steering wheel, then you can certainly get rid of the column, right?
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, as a driver's car,
yeah.
Because you guys have done I think a remarkable job on the GTP specifically, and even just the regular touring, like for something that heavy. And I've driven, we've driven, Taycan. I've driven the Audi versions. I've driven all the, the Tesla, every big four-door EV. Like, and I tell all my Porsche cultist friends this all the time. Like, if you think the Taycan's good, you should drive the Grand Touring Performance because it's like twice as sporty, if not more. We talked about that when Misha was on, Misha Mansour, and I let him drive the GTP, and he has a GT3. He has a 991 1.2 and a McLaren and blah, 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 blah. And he was blown away. He's like, this might be my new daily. Like, I can't believe this. We're up
Well, let's talk about that. So we talked about your personal handling benchmarks. What did you guys as a development team, as a chassis team, benchmark for these high-performance Lucids? Were they the cars he mentioned? Plaid? No?
I mean, when we started this, so we really kicked off vehicle design in 2015. 2016. So, like, Plaid wasn't around at that point. Taycan wasn't around at that point. So, in one of your previous episodes, Max Koff from Rivian talked about the cardinal sin of cherry-picking attributes from different cars. We did that too. We said, well, normally you say, well, you can't have your cake and eat it and have the best riding car and the best handling car. And we said, well, screw it, why not? Let's see what we can do here. And we were taking such a different approach to so many things on the car, especially in the powertrain and electronics domains. Or why not do that as well in chassis and dynamics as well? So back then we looked at Porsche Panamera. We looked at the then current M5 that was the F10, if I remember correctly.
Right. So that's the twin turbo V8, not the V10. Yeah.
Yep. We looked at the 991 GT3. I think it was Gen 1 at that point. And the Mercedes S-Class for ride quality. One of our longest running benchmark cars is an S550 from, I think, 2015, which is fantastic.
What a wonderful car.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So comfortable.
I mean, I remember I happened to go on the launch of that too, and I remember like their slogan was the best car in the world, and like, you know, before we're driving it, everyone's like rolling their eyes like, and we're driving, we're like, yeah, I can't really argue that.
Is it air suspension?
I have both.
There is one.
Yeah.
There was a coil sprung one with magic body control, which is what we have, and there's an air sprung version as well.
Yeah. So that is actually a question I want to follow up on. Why did you guys then make the decision to not do air suspension?
Yeah, it's the Lucid Air without air.
Right.
Which just kind of headline writes itself. I'm glad no one's done that. Hopefully I've now ruined it for them.
No, we're going to write it.
Damn it. We looked at it, and in fact our alpha prototypes had air suspension. And we said, okay, what are the key things we're trying to do with this car? It's got to be supremely comfortable. It's got to handle really well. Peter had said to us at the start, Peter Rawlinson, our CEO, CTO, he said, I want this to ride better than an S-Class. I want it to rival a Lotus for handling. Yep. And we were thinking, well, how many 5,000-pound Lotuses, Loti are there? But okay.
Now there's a couple. Anyways.
Yeah, there certainly wasn't at that point.
Right.
But we said, right, that's a challenge. Let's go for it. And yeah, we started out with air suspension, and we said, right, it's got to ride very well, it's got to handle very well, it's got to have great range and efficiency as well. And of course, the range comes through efficiency. We don't want to just add more and more batteries to it. Right. So from a ride perspective and a handling perspective, coil springs are great because they're linear, they're predictable, they have very low hysteresis. Hysteresis being kind of energy lost as you compress or extend something and then take it back to its original position. So
and air springs would have high.
They have high hysteresis because you're essentially rolling a rubber or some other material bag, which can give you high friction. So the way that presents to the customer is your kind of small bump compliance, your secondary ride of a really fine stuff. People think air suspension, it's wonderful, it's like riding on a cloud. Often coil's better because coils have low hysteresis, much better small bump compliance, and therefore secondary ride, the small texture type stuff, is much better with a coil. So that was really attractive to us. And we said, okay, on the range side, we have a very low coefficient of drag. It's around 0.2. And your forced due to drag is it's affected by both your drag coefficient and your frontal area. So manufacturers typically use air springs to be able to lower the vehicle at freeway speeds to decrease the frontal area and help from a drag perspective.
You didn't need to do that, right?
We didn't need to do that.
Right.
It's already very, very sleek. CD is very good. It's already quite a low vehicle, and our frontal area is quite small compared with a lot of our competitors. So we said there's minimal advantage to be had by having air suspension here. And in fact, we'll actually expend energy by running a compressor and a valve block and an ECU. So we said coil is the way to go here, and it also simplifies the vehicle. This is our first vehicle. We're a small team. We've got to focus our engineering efforts where it's most important. So
also handling, I imagine, would be better with coil as opposed to air.
But what about the fun stuff you can do with, like, again, if one of your targets was that S550, they had that magic ride control, right? That had that ability to lift the wheel, you could scan the road, oncoming bump, or whatever, and then.
Well, that was adaptive dampers. That wasn't air.
I thought that was that.
So then an air suspension system can't react quickly enough to do that stuff.
Oh,
so you
okay.
need a higher bandwidth, fast acting system like Magic Body Control,
That's what
or there's other versions of it like the Bose system that was.
Yes.
I don't think it ever made production, but it was showed around a bit a few years ago.
Frank Marcus wrote about that.
There's that. Also,
years.
the Mercedes Bose the hydraulic system.
Yeah.
Which had super fast acting 48 volt hydraulic motors that
Yeah.
can make the car bounce up and down.
Yeah, so there's a few 12 volt and 48 volt hydraulic systems now.
Yeah.
So you need that kind of system to be able to
Got
lift
it.
a wheel
Okay.
or bounce the car on the spot for Instagram reels and whatever else.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Mind share.
Okay. All right. Good. That was Eric Ting. That was another one of our testing guys.
Yeah,
questions.
interesting though about you're running a compressor because I have a Rivian that has a compressor, two compressors in it, and not the most efficient vehicle. It has other good points.
Yeah. It was the best choice for us for the Air.
Right. Now you keep saying for the Air, for the Gravity. I imagine you're going to want to have suspension that goes up. The Gravity is the SUV that's coming. When you guys are going to? When is that? It's after Pebble. You're going to show that.
I actually don't know when we're going to show it.
Because you've been teasing it.
The guy,
Pierre is like,
he's
renting
looking
his
at us
clothing right now.
like,
But that, I imagine you'll want to be able to go up and down.
Yeah, there's a different set of expectations for an SUV.
Okay.
And I think air suspension is kind of it's expected by customers. We also want to have some off-road capability.
Yes. So ground clearance gives you that capability easily.
Yeah. And then being able to lower the thing on the freeway. It's a bigger vehicle.
Bigger frontal area.
Exactly. So it's more beneficial for us to be able to shrink that frontal area than it is on a already very slippery sedan.
So are you going with air or are you going with hydraulics like somebody told me you were?
I could not possibly confirm nor deny anything.
All right. A guy from Rivian said he ran into you up in the North Pole or something. And they're using the same system as Mercedes. So I don't know. They're not going to confirm or deny it, but that'd be cool if you had the ability to bounce on Instagram. It's a key attribute of a luxury vehicle.
Good job, Johnny. Now Lucid's putting a hit out on the rival of Rivian. Okay. And I want to just call out that David's been doing a lot more of the answering here because Greg, in comparison, you've only been at Lucid for like 2 years now.
Yeah,
right?
about 2 years now. Yeah.
But where were you before that?
I was at Tesla.
And you worked on
Chassis controls over there, too.
but also specifically the.
I assume you're going to say Plaid.
I'm going to say the Plaid.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was were you? When did you come into Plaid development?
Yeah, I mean, I was responsible for the traction control calibration and lots of the software.
What that would have been? That would have been 20. But
It's all kind of a blur.
2020.
How long did you work on it before it was put into production?
We started. I think the most public stuff was the Nürburgring stuff, which I think was in 2019.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, we worked on it.
So reverse, inverse, whatever of the question I asked David for Lucid. When you're doing any of that kind of stuff, was Lucid at all on your radar? Were you guys looking around going,
I mean, I had seen David at a couple proving grounds throughout the years.
It's a very small world.
It is.
It's a small world. Like I see.
That's how I get most of my scoops. I'm like, oh, who were you hanging out with? In the desert. Oh, they were there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see all of my coworkers from all of the companies that I've worked at, all three.
Right.
I mean, I'm still working. So before Tesla, I was at Bosch.
Right.
Which is a supplier that we use here. So I'm still seeing all my coworkers from the Bosch days.
And for people not in the industry, like turns out Bosch does everything. Bosch is they're like this giant octopus with their tentacles in every single automaker.
They want to do a lot more too.
They do want to do a lot more, yeah.
They are freaked out about the software, the encroachment of software, and all these companies trying to take this stuff vertical. Because, as you guys know, right, when you're at a vertically integrated manufacturer and you handle everything, you don't need
suppliers.
But the Bosches, the Delphis, the Continentals of the world. You don't
Johnson Control.
You don't need them as much. So I was at a conference last year around this time where the Bosch guy and the Continental guy basically said, "We're screwed if you guys keep integrating." It used to be and I want to get to software with you guys because my understanding is you're a mechanical engineer and you're.
Ed's pointing at Greg.
But both are you both mechanical engineers?
Yes.
And now you're like up to your eyeballs in software stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Turns out we made a bad choice back at school.
Or the best choice
Maybe.
because you're old.
Right.
You're old enough now that you don't have to like knife each other. Like you're already at jobs where you're doing this, whereas everyone else coming up behind you has a computer science degree or an electrical engineering degree. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, both of us are vehicle dynamicists originally, right? So it's that's more of a mechanical engineering side field. And then chassis controls is kind of, it's kind of the combination of vehicle dynamics and software, right? So it's I think you can kind of come at it from either way. And I think generally speaking, most chassis controls people start as mechanical engineers and vehicle dynamics people, and then pick up the software.
Because they've had to, right? I mean, the software is only a sort of a recent thing to this traditional way of setting up a car, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually a neat way to think about it, that what you guys, at its core, if we were to go back 100 years and it's doing the same thing, it hasn't changed all that much. You're going to move a wheel this way, it's going to make the car turn in faster, slower, you're going to do this, it's going to more grip, right? That's fundamentally an analog type of thing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And now you're layering digital on top. But in the future, theoretically, it's like all these people are coming up and the cars are all digital. It's like digital to influence the analog thing. I don't know. Does it make any sense?
But I think
No, you lost me.
Okay.
But both are hugely important, and a car will hopefully always remain a physical thing that its primary purpose is to get you from one place to another. So there has to be a physical element to that until teleportation is invented. So we need engineers with fantastic mechanical understanding. And I was kidding earlier, saying made a bad choice. Any kids listening, mechanical engineering is a great education and career.
I always, when people are like, I want to work in the car biz, what should I study? I'm just like, materials.
Yeah.
Go study the physical things that make up the cars.
Yeah. But our best engineers are people who have an understanding of both.
Sure.
Greg and I are part of the Chassis and Vehicle Dynamics group, but there was a neighboring group that we work really closely with that is vehicle controls, and they do everything from torque and power management with our drive units to torque vectoring to in-house traction control together with us. And they're a combination of EE engineers, control engineers, mechanical engineers, and it's so powerful when you have people who understand both realms.
Yeah.
And they understand the physical system and what we need to do to make a car behave a certain way and feel a certain way, and then they understand how to make that happen with software and controls. It's so powerful.
Yeah, and like whether it's an anti-roll bar or a motor torque, right? Like they're all knobs, and the fun part of the job is trying to figure out. We have this handling behavior that we want to improve, and I can fix it with changing traction control slip targets, and one of my colleagues can fix it with a bushing change or an anti-roll bar change. And you're trying to figure out, software's really good at certain things and not so good at other things. And, mechanical anti-roll bars or whatever, also really good at certain things and not as good at other things. And each of the different changes that you have available to you at any given time will have a certain ability to impact the, maneuver that you're trying to improve. And they also come with a bunch of different drawbacks. And, the fun part that I really enjoy about the job is looking at these problems and then working between, I'm on the vehicle dynamics team, which is not, it's kind of a hardware team, but it's also it's a tuning and software team as much as it is a hardware team. And then, looking at the problem and trying to figure out, okay, do we need to go to the mechanical team and say, increase the anti-roll bar by 1 millimeter, or go to the tire guys, the software people, and then try to identify like what are all the different knobs that we have available to make this better. And
by knob you mean like a lever, something you can adjust.
Knob in that like changing a value, right?
A parameter you can tweak.
What are all the different knobs that I can turn to make this behavior as good as I can without.
So do you have an example of like one where it's like, all right, I want to change the roll bar, and like, what, if we just put a slightly different tire on it, it would accomplish the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, so like if we talk about the Sapphire a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's a 3-motor car. You can now do, different amounts of torque on the 2 rear wheels. And if you put more torque on the right side, it's going to make the car turn to the left a little bit, vice versa. And so like that gives you the option to do a bunch of really cool stuff with the base chassis balance, right? But you need to, you can't just take that and put it on an existing car and have it be perfect, because it also is going to impact what you want to do from a base chassis tuning standpoint, right? So the software is really good because you can now you can do a bunch of like sublimit responsiveness changes, right?
What do you mean by a sublimit? Okay. Oh, you mean so you're not at the vehicle's
Below.
limit?
You're not, yeah, you're not like
Okay.
sliding
Okay.
sideways
Yeah, yeah.
or
Got-
anything.
got it,
You're
got it.
you're
Right.
driving
Regular
relatively
driving.
normally.
Yeah.
So with the torque vectoring, you can make the car feel like it has a shorter wheelbase or feel like it has a longer wheelbase, right? And so that and you can change that with the speed as well. So on a normal car, right, the car generally will get less stable as you go faster, right? Lower speeds, you're generally going to have some understeer. As you go higher in speed, the car is going to start to oversteer more easily, right? With the torque vectoring, you can kind of flip that around, right? At high speeds, you can do a lot of, we call it restoring moment, whereas as the driver's starting to turn in, you give them a little bit of counter moment in the opposite direction, and keep the car more stable.
Which feels stable to the driver.
Which feels more stable, right? And then at lower speeds, you can make the car turn in a lot more. And so you can kind of change that normal behavior a little bit. You want to do it in a way that feels natural and everything, obviously. But you can kind of hide some of the normal behaviors that cars normally do. What that means, though, is it means that you can now change how you set up that base chassis. Because normally you're saying, okay, at really high speeds, I need it to be really, really stable. And then that's going to make the low speed behavior is not as good. It's going to understeer a lot more.
Right. So it'll feel pushy.
So exactly.
Yeah.
With the torque vectoring, it means that you can, to some extent, break that trade-off a little bit. And so now you can say, you can kind of rethink how you're tuning that system, the base chassis, because of the controls. And so you can make a car that's really, really stable at high speed without the downsides that would normally come with it at lower speeds.
So, and this is another Mr. Tingwell question. Speaking of the knobs and the levers and your targets, and I should say for our audience, we should have said this like way sooner. The Lucid Air is MotorTrend's car of the year.
Yeah.
So we have one, and we've been driving it, and it's spent its first 6 months with our team in Detroit, and only recently Eric drove it across country, and now Zach Gale has it. So I asked them both for any of their feedback. Eric asked, there's very little driver adjustability in the Air. The three modes that do exist emphasize speed over cornering. There's smooth, swift, and sprint. A, is that accurate? B, do you guys consider giving the driver more direct control over the damper settings? Is this something that might be coming in an over-the-air update? Or what was the idea there in terms of the tunability from the driver's seat?
Yeah. So where we are today, we've got three different drive modes: smooth, swift, and sprint. And changing between those, we change, as Eric called out, power and torque, the peak power and torque. We also change the curves themselves.
I mean, the delivery of that power and torque.
Yeah. We change where that power and torque is directed. So as you go in a more aggressive direction into swift and sprint, it gets increasingly rear biased. And we become more reactive to how the customer is driving as well. So the harder you drive the car, the more rear biased it goes, and it does that more in the more aggressive modes as well. We also change our adaptive damper settings, steering, brake boost to give kind of improved or more precise modulation ability in swift and sprint. So I think the car does change character quite a bit. I think
I think what he's saying is you can't like on a 5 Series, you can change the strength of the shifts in the transmission. You can
separately
I'm in my high speed. I'm in whatever you call it, Sport Plus, but I can put on comfort suspension.
Yeah.
So in other words, you can decouple certain parameters from the mode it's in. You guys don't offer that. Would you consider that? Is that something you would do in the future? Did you consider it?
It's something we considered, and it's something we wanted to do. But again, we were and are a pretty small team.
Right.
So we said, at least for the launch of the car and for the first X number of months, we need to do probably a maximum of 3 drive modes that we will curate. So we choose what we think are the best picks and combinations of these different settings. And the reason we did that is we need to test and validate every possible setup a customer can choose in every possible driving situation a customer can do on this car.
Right.
Including some real crazy corner case stuff.
Sure.
And we said, if we have 3 different modes for every single different adjustable system on our car, steering, brake control, traction control, suspension, power delivery, torque, whatever, it just becomes exponentially more complex.
Just in the man-hours of testing it.
Exactly. And we said we've got no way of doing that before we launch this car. So let's keep it simple, 3 modes, and get it right.
This guy would then just be knocking you for, there's too many modes, I can't figure it out.
I was just about to say that. I will applaud you for being so thoughtful about it. You should have also said, and I'll have your PR guy coach you on this. Don't say that. Say like the BMW approach is straight. It's hot garbage. Like why? I sit there and I look at the stupid shifter and I look at this. It looks like a volume control because the bars get longer. I'm like, so what does this mean? This
intensity of shifts.
Intensity of shifts, which actually means speed. So it actually means they're shorter shifts, right? But the bar is longer because it's higher intensity. And then I have to do that same thing for every other control.
Or you program it once and forget about it.
You do it and
put it
Cadillac.
in the M button.
Cadillac
Those
copied
M
them.
buttons are incredible.
It's cool. Yeah, glad you did it, but I still have to figure out like, okay, why? Like it used to be.
Ed's not a race car driver.
It used to be no. Most race car drivers say they turn everything off anyways.
No.
They want one mode. Their one mode is all off.
No. Bull. Race car drivers. That's why the new GT3 RS are going to play with my bar.
That's not a race car. GT3 RS is not a race car.
It's pretty close to a race car.
No. So
it's got more downforce than a race car.
Cadillac did the same thing. Like, and theirs is even crazier because it's on the screen. I got to go to a screen and like dial in these things. So I applaud you guys for actually thinking of the consumer and making it as sort of clear and obvious. I will say just one question on that. When you guys are dialing these cars in and this performance, do you have some? It's very popular with big car manufacturers to have we're designing this for Steve. Steve is he's 54 years old. He's a hedge fund manager. He's got a boat, a house. He's 3 wives. No, did you have a customer profile in mind? And if so, who was it in terms of the Lucid owner?
We certainly saw some of those profiles more on the design side,
Okay.
kind of mapping out the whole early concept of the vehicle, the UX UI stuff. Within our team, we said we've been tasked with this kind of duality of vehicle. It's a Mercedes S-Class and it's also a Lotus, and we also want it to be an E39 M5 and a 911 GT3 and. So,
but that's sort of the same owner, right?
maybe.
So you were designing for an Evo magazine reader.
I will admit to being a subscriber to Evo.
Yes,
But we saw drive modes as our way of doing this. So yes, to try to answer your question, we somewhat mapped that out, but we didn't have a Steve with 3 boats or 3 wives or anything like that. Okay. But it was
one wife, 2 mistresses. Come on.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, certain countries, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I want to. Curious. I want to ask Greg something to sort of change it up and get back to Plaid a little bit because I think we kind of just brushed over that because it was a pretty groundbreaking. Like they had what was it? The Ludicrous was the last really fast one, the 2-motor car, and it was like I don't know what it was doing, 10 something in the quarter mile, and then like the jump to Plaid. Like, were you at Tesla when they're like, you know what, we're going to do a 3-motor car, or did you come in and it was already under development?
No, I was there when it first came up. Yeah.
So what was the thought process behind like, you know what, like we're already one of the quickest cars in the world. Let's be the quickest. Like what spurred that on? I
mean, yeah, why not go faster, right?
Okay, yeah.
Did Elon come out to any of this testing, or would he ever jump in there? Do you ever meet him? I guess.
Yeah, I've met Elon a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, good work.
Generally, yeah.
All right.
Well, hang on. So what were you? What was? I guess what I'm trying to get to with the Plaid was it just like we're going to make the quickest accelerating car? Was that the?
Yeah, that's all they talked about because they didn't put brakes on the car.
Well, yeah. Was that the mood board? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it was. I think the logical next step, right? Like, you on the P100D, it's really fast, but not that thermally robust, and it's not. It's a really fast straight line car, and then the next step is, you can make it even faster, and you can add all these new handling abilities, right? With the extra rear motor. And yeah, I think that's basically it.
I don't know if you can tell, but I think when Greg is looking up, he's trying to remember the NDA he's signed. That's what he's doing.
Maybe I don't know.
So,
Maybe
we'll get off the topic for it.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, could you talk about, and this fascinated me because I remember when you guys, I drove up to or flew up to see the Sapphire when it was before you'd revealed it. You showed me like an advanced look at it, and I was talking with Eric Bach. And he was kind of just what's his title? He's your chief something or
senior vice president of product and chief engineer. I'm going to get this wrong. He's my boss, so I'm in trouble now.
Yes, but very very smart guy who knows lots of stuff about cars and EVs and all that. But he was saying, because I was like, well, how much power does it make? And you guys still haven't actually told us how much power the Sapphire makes, although we have some estimates based on what we think the weight is.
It'd be interesting to hear those.
Yeah, well, here.
You nailed his title, by the way. LinkedIn says Senior Vice President of Product and Chief Engineer at Lucid Motors. So you're fine.
I can tell you in a second what our estimate is. But because I was like, well, each motor can make 670 horsepower, so that times 3 is this. And then what he said was interesting. He goes, no, we don't want to do that because, like, if you're making a left-hand turn, let's say we have both the motors at, both rear motors making 400. Well, as you're turning, one actually has to slow down, but then we can overpower the other one to kind of keep the total, which I thought was really fascinating.
So if you basically have, like, more motor torque and power available, then you can even use in a straight line. It means that you can, like, you don't have a differential, right?
Right.
There's no differential in the rear axle.
So there's no mechanical link from wheel to wheel.
Yeah. So, like, each motor is connected to its own wheel. And so that wheel will only ever see as much torque as that motor can provide. You can't, like, transfer torque from the left to the right wheel like you can with the differential. So by having, like, essentially larger motors than you might think that you need, it means that you can then have extra reserve power and torque for when you're in a corner and your inside wheel can't do that much, but by having, a little bit more torque than you would normally need or power than you normally need, you can then transfer that power to the outside wheel, essentially.
The estimate, this was Chris Walton's estimate, he said 1,500 horsepower is about what he's guessing the Sapphire. That's one of our test guys.
Interesting.
So based on 9.2 and 157 and some other stuff. So...
Poker player.
Poker face.
Okay. You said interesting too fast, though.
It's capable because, again, like, I don't know what 670 times 3 is, but it sounds like it's 19 something.
Let me ask you something. Because you guys brought up Max Koff and Rivian, and we've been now pinging you about, like, companies you worked at. Let me get the timeline straight first. Plaid came out first. It was announced having 3 motors, right? But Sapphire's already in development. The 3 motors already in development when that was announced.
Yeah, 3 motors was part of the plan from day one.
In fact, I remember before the Air came out, I was up at your headquarters, and there was a 3 motor sitting there. I mean, the package of here's what 3 motors looks like. Here's 2, here's 3.
And I remember you joined us at Laguna Seca one time many years ago, where we had a silver on black Air with a wide body, which is one of our first tri-motor mules. So it was in the plan from day one, and the vehicle was designed with this in mind. But we chose to launch with a dual motor version. There'll be a rear-wheel drive coming later this year at a much lower entry price point. And then the Tri.
So then, what was the reaction when Rivian drops a 4-motor, the world's first 4-motor EV? Are you guys, because you were at Tesla then, right? When Rivian came out, were you guys like, oh god? I mean, we've heard anecdotally that Tesla stopped production on Cybertruck and said, okay, guys, 4 motors it is, because apparently they were going to put the 3 motor. That's the,
well, yeah. I have a little insight into that, but yeah, apparently that was one of the many holdups.
That's what us dummies on the journalism side heard. What was it actually
this was
like?
Not through journalism. This was through,
I know. I'm just saying. But what was it like at the places where you guys were at when Rivian comes out and you're like honk, and with a honking amount of horsepower and torque?
Mm-hmm. On the Lucid side, we had considered quad motor previously, And we said, well, at least for the sedan, for Air, 3 is more than enough, as hopefully Johnny will attest, having driven it.
2's more than enough. Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
Mr.
two's adequate.
This is the guy who's every podcast is like, the Rivian needs more horsepower.
I would like 1,200 horsepower.
I would
out of
like
my
6
Rivian.
motors, please.
No, four's perfect. But four's perfect for off-roading. On road,
Yeah.
it makes no difference whatsoever. But for off-roading,
Okay.
it's game changing.
Yeah, so we're able to do a lot, as Greg mentioned earlier, with torque vectoring with the 2 motors on the rear. We're able to do more than we want to do. If we just kept turning up those knobs, it could feel very artificial, and the car just pivots, just rotates all the time. And we've tried it, and it's fun, but it doesn't feel organic.
Right.
So we don't need any more torque vectoring capability. We're already on the tri-motor. We don't have to run the motors at their full capability. We're already tire limited. So there isn't a huge amount of point in adding in another motor from a performance side. As Johnny mentioned, it's when you start going off-road and you're potentially lifting a wheel, that's where quad really can help you out. If you have an axle that has one motor operating that axle, you can lean on brake-based torque vectoring, where when a wheel lifts, you can start to drag a brake, or you can clamp to shift torque to the other side. But for the Air sedan, hopefully people aren't often in that situation. But for a Rivian, it's great. It's a great idea.
What about for Gravity, your SUV?
Couldn't possibly confirm nor deny.
All right. So,
Well, let me. Okay.
wait, hold on.
Greg.
I want Greg to answer.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Yeah,
again,
there
when
was a big
Rivian
question.
mic drops 4
Yeah.
motors, you're at Tesla. You guys.
And
are
you must
like-
have known something about Cybertruck.
No comment.
Wow,
Perfect.
tough interview. All right, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think there are some benefits of the 4th motor for sure. But yeah, as David mentioned, like, it makes it that much harder to make it feel natural and all that. And then also, like, in the context of a performance car rather than truck, in the context of a performance car, you really want that, like, rear biased torque split and everything. So, like, with 2 motors on the rear and 1 motor on the third or on the front, you're at kind of a 1/3, 2/3 torque split, which is about right to start with. If you wanted to put a 4th motor, second motor on the front, now you either have to design an entire new motor, right? You need a much smaller motor, otherwise it's going to be way too much torque on the front. Or you have to carry around, in our case, motors are pretty tiny, they don't weigh that much, but you're carrying around a lot of additional weight on the front axle.
Well, like for
get
instance, Ferrari with like the SF90, they since they don't have any existing traction motors, right? So it's easy. They put 2 small motors on each front wheel.
Mm-hmm.
For you guys, because you have one traction motor that's used in a zillion applications, you'd have to come up with a smaller motor for the front, and then you don't do that. You just have one motor that you use on the front and the rear, and then you double it up for the 3 motor.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: does this make any sense? 2 motors on the rear, no motors on the front. Would that be a way to do? What's the
I've
last?
been asking for this.
Greg
okay.
has been proposing this for a good year and a half.
Because
now.
that sounds like an interesting,
Drift-
real
drift car.
performance. Well, drift, but real performance.
Sure.
And steering feel. Getting weight off the nose. Right. I assume that's why you. I saw. By the way, I saw this guy drift the Sapphire. He's a pretty good driver. And
You better be 15,000 launches or something.
well, that's just I could do 15,000 launches. I'm not going to. Drifting's a whole other realm. But yeah, so talk to me about 2 rear motors. What does that give you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get it's a rear-wheel drive car. Everybody loves a good rear-wheel drive car, right? You get a lot of if you just think about, like, with our 3-motor setup, you can do kind of front-rear torque split, and you can do left-right torque split. And those can do different things, right? So your front-rear torque split is mainly going to be kind of limit handling type stuff, where the way that works is you're reducing one of the axle's lateral force capacity, right? So if you're in a corner and you put a bunch of torque on the front axle, you're using a lot of the tire to accelerate or brake, and so you can't turn as much on the front axle.
Right.
That's going to cause understeer, vice versa on the rear. So that's really where the front rear torque split, torque vectoring happens. Whereas the left right gives you sublimit. It gives you lots of ability to change how the car feels when you're not necessarily at the limit. And then it also gives you a bunch of stuff at the limit as well. I mean, S2000, NSX,
right?
So many great rear-wheel drive cars over the years. I think as a driver, driving enthusiast first and foremost, I would love one.
Yeah. Huh. I like that. So you can do like a Sapphire Light or something. I don't know what you call it.
The Greg edition.
Greg edition. Yeah. Hey, why not?
Okay. That's fascinating. I'm trying to think I'm a big photography camera nerd, and there's the same thing that's happening in cars has happened in photography just about 20 years earlier with the switch to digital, and there's now all these camera companies. Fuji's one of them actually, where they're using digital and algorithms to recreate old film emulsions. So you can actually buy a digital camera, and it gives you Fuji Chrome. It gives you the slide film from the 70s, and it makes me think you could now have a car that maybe you could hit a button and it gives you the S2000 profile, or it gives you a 240 SX with a welded diff, the drift mode.
It's funny you say that because our friend in Tennessee, when Infinity came out with the steer-by-wire, gave us a presentation in the old conference room and was like, "Yeah, we could just hit a button and you get Porsche steering."
Right.
I was like, "Where's that button?"
Well, I haven't had it yet. Okay. So I want to eventually go a little broader and start talking about where you guys see this whole thing going. But I'm curious if you have any. Let me see. I have some other questions here. We talk about tires. Here's one that's topical, totally unrelated. Just a curveball for you.
All right.
This is newsy. This is as of last week. So Ford just announced that they're gonna go to the NACS, the Tesla, the former Tesla, whatever charging standard. North American charging standard is what Tesla calls it, even though that sounds very official, but it's it's their own thing.
Yeah.
Jim Farley, CEO, announced it, hit all the headlines. I wrote something on it. It kind of blew up for me, which is kind of nice. You guys have any thoughts about this? How much do you love the J1772 charge handle and the CCS and all the issues that go along with it? And is this any thoughts?
I think I'm agnostic to the standard and the design of the plug itself, but I think we recognize that Tesla did a brilliant thing in the rollout of their supercharger network. They saw that early. They rolled that out. I don't know at what expense, but it's Greg owns a Model 3, so he experiences this daily. I've driven loads of Teslas, and it's a great experience. You rock up, they're going to work. It's easy. It's simple.
That's the nice part.
Yeah. And I think we also recognize that on the more open standards, there are things haven't been fully figured out yet. But I'm personally very optimistic, and I think an open standard is the way to go.
What's an open standard?
So a non-proprietary standard that's not linked to a single OEM. Or now to 1.5 OEMs.
Tesla would argue that because they did a name change back in it's November of 2022, where they said, "Hey, this thing is now they claim they've opened it up. It's a mechanical. Mm-hmm. They give you the mechanical the specs to it theoretically, and there's nothing. I have no idea when any money changes hands or whatever. But apparently the design is opened up and anybody can use it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not the case, or are you kind of
I don't know the details.
It's not like an agreed, but to your point, it's not like the SAE standard for CCS.
Yeah, but loads of very intelligent people have put a lot of thought into the standard that we are part of, and that's why we joined that standard. Mm-hmm. And we see kind of increased investment and increased adoption of that open standard as the way forward. We think it'll simplify things. We think it's the best solution once it's fully figured out for everybody going forward.
I don't care either way, except that I was driving a Hummer EV yesterday, the day before, and I went to charge it, and Hummer chose to put the port at the back of the truck, right? Okay, mm-hmm. Fine. And so I had to back in, I had to be pretty far away from the charger, and then the level 3 plug is the size of a small iron, and I'm a strong human being, and I was trying to muscle this thing in with the cord tension, and I'm like, this is just ridiculous. I even know what I'm doing. I've done this before, and it's just and with the Tesla, it's light and it's easy to get in. That's my only
moving parts.
Well, yeah, that's also big because it took me
don't break.
Yes, and when I was done charging, I was like trying to get the thing out, and I was like, "This is so stupid," because it was like showing a white light. The button you push was stuck in, and it wasn't moving out. And I'm like, "Well, I could rip it out." Oh, I can't do that, So that was that's the only thing I like about the Tesla plug. Is that it's easy to get in and out. That's because it's just so big. The level 3 plug.
Turns out, if you're one company designing your vehicle and your charging solution, it's easier in that respect. But but I mean, these things they're not insurmountable. They'll get figured out. There will be a narrowing of what people are doing. And today it's kind of the Wild West, and it's kind of exciting. And you get all these little quirks of different cars with charge ports in different places. And
that's a very rosy picture you're painting, though. I have to say,
I'm in a positive mood.
Okay, because I'll tell you that, and this is the part I should have set this up with because it's part of this thing I wrote. I went on this road trip over Christmas. It was raining. It drove from a small town in California known as Los Angeles to another small town that no one's heard of called in Sacramento, right, along a road no one's heard of, I-5. Mm-hmm. And I stopped at this charging station in Fresno. It was pouring to Electrify America station, so they didn't have any awnings. And the charger was broken that I tried, and then I found one, put the car on them, and took care of my kid, feeding him, watching other people. Mm-hmm. Including a guy in our car of the year, a Lucid, like one of the only Lucids I had seen at that point on the road that wasn't one of ours or a test vehicle. Old man struggled to charge his car at this broken Electrify America charger. And he had to because it's chargers, and he had to he had to repark it. And nobody told him the thing was broken. And because it was raining, the sign that somebody...
And Ed didn't get up to go tell him.
I had a kid with me. I was eating French fries going, let's look at this schmuck.
You just filmed it.
I just did that. Like, whoa, this poor old man. But
that's it, everybody.
The sign... when the guys sitting... I'll tell you, the people sitting in the cars who were just watching him charging, those are the real a-holes.
Right.
But the sign somebody had written on the poster, of course, the rain had washed it away. Mm-hmm. But my point being, Lucid is a premium... you guys are a luxury car manufacturer.
Ain't cheap. Yep.
Mercedes-Benz also, they just announced that they're gonna set up their own networks. It's 2,500 chargers. But the thing that flashed in my brain is no premium brand, no premium car manufacturer who's making an EV should sell an EV unless they can guarantee a premium charging experience, right? You demand, as a manufacturer, you demand your dealers to give a white glove treatment to the shopper and to take care of them at service. Why would charging not fall under that, umbrella? It's a poor, especially now that we're hitting sort of the fat part of the curve in terms of adoption. Like, people are just looking for reasons not to buy an EV, and I would say charging is one of them.
Yeah.
Now I apologize because you guys are chassis guys. You're like, why is he ripping us over this? But please respond.
But yeah, no, I think what you say is completely fair, and I don't disagree. And we live this as well when we drive our development vehicles long distance. So we see the state of the charging infrastructure, and I think we recognize that it's not where it needs to be. And to your point about our customers, you're totally right. We love our customers. They've placed their trust in us, and they deserve a premium experience. It's not there right now, but we're going to make sure it gets there.
And Greg, give me some headlines from. So you own a Tesla in Ohio?
Yep.
How's the charging out there?
It's pretty good. I mean, if you're out in California, there's 30 chargers in a 5-mile radius. If you're in San Francisco or Los Angeles, and then tons and tons of coverage between the two and everywhere else in the state. In the Midwest, it's not quite as sparse, or it's not quite as dense. It's a little bit more sparse. But I mean, you've got a supercharger and an Electrify America station or whatever in every city.
Do you ever use anything other than the Tesla network or the supercharger network?
You can't really. I mean, you can buy there's like a $500 adapter, but yeah, it's pretty much USB versus Lightning essentially. Like, they're pretty incompatible.
Okay, so you never have to deal with Electrify America.
With my personal car, no.
Okay, got
it. I would add as well that.
Oh, right, because you're driving Lucid. You're charging Lucids out there. Okay.
That's what I was asking.
I would add as well that we recognize that the infrastructure is not there yet, and we recognize that pretty early on in the development stage, and that's one of the reasons why we've majored on range. So there are several versions of the Air which will get over 500 miles of range on the EPA cycle and in real life. I think we don't sell a version of the car with less than 400 and something miles, which gives our customers more flexibility, more safety margin.
And it's worth pointing out, as I do to almost everyone I talk to about this, like, if you have that much range, like, unless you're, really just all you do for a living is road trip, it's charging's not an issue at all, because you charge at home, and then you charge at home, and then you charge at home, and it's just, even like my EV, I think with they sent out some updates, and now we get we could get 300 miles of range if we charged 100%. We never do. We never worry about charging. It's just not even. Not the only thing I have to every day look at the phone and if I'm out of town, I tell my wife to plug it in because she'll forget. Like I did yesterday. I'm like, hey, your truck's at 17%. Plug it in. But so the big battery is a helpful thing.
And not just big battery, also efficiency as well.
Yeah. Well, you have both.
I'll be very pedantic here.
I know.
We firmly believe that adding more batteries is not the solution. It's just heavier, it's more expensive.
Yes, but you do have a relatively big battery.
Smaller than some out there.
Smaller than I'd say smaller than Rivian, smaller than Hummer, smaller than
Lightning,
Rolls Royce. No, oh yeah, Lightning is like the size of
130.
Smaller than Rimats.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But
by the way, have you got off the record?
Off the record, the mic's on.
Have you heard about the Rolls Royce battery? No. Do you have any? Okay, because I was talking to someone, and they're like, "Yeah, it's going to have 500 miles of range," and I'm like, "It's on the Phantom platform. That's already 3 tons without a battery. Like that's gonna be like it's gonna be a Hummer-sized battery. I think
they will
9,000 pounds.
They'll advertise that the cobalt is from the Congo on that one. That's kind of the point.
Well, because the mine owner is going to buy one.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, so you were, but here, this is great because this goes right into one of our. So the new shepherd of our car of the year, Lucid, is Zach Gale, and he asks, "Will we see a 600-mile EPA rated Lucid in the next 5 or so plus years?" I think you sort of alluded to that. You can confirm or deny, but I'll ask, what's the upper limit? Like at some points, 500 seems fine. 600, we don't need really more than that. And I'm also, when I met with, I went to your visit, I gave you guys the award at your headquarters, and I had this lightning tour of your facilities in Northern California. Mm-hmm. And
which is a cool facility.
Yes,
we should. Yeah. It's the Willy Wonka of car makers.
Eric Bach and Peter, they were talking my ear off about how all of this technology is great. To your point, efficiency is the real target, and having this, the smaller motors, the more efficient, smaller, more robust battery packs. It's not about what it unlocks at the high end; it's what it unlocks at the lower end for a lighter weight, theoretically 200-mile, 250-mile. Vehicle that could be sold at a much lower price point than any EV is currently. At least it's like a year ago, currently on sale. So that was a lot. Like anything
600 miles.
I can't comment on what the business plans to do long term, but we know that the vast majority of customers don't do more than 80 miles a day. Right. Yeah, we have some outliers who will do 500, 600, 700-mile road trips, but the vast majority is under 80 a day. Today, by offering vehicles that'll do 520 miles of range, 517, 480, whatever, it means that customers can choose to only charge once a week if that's what they want to do. Or they can charge at home every evening and have loads of buffer. Our long-term goal is to drive down the cost of our vehicles. So today, we're offering touring at 107, 400, I think it is.
Which used to be a lot of money.
Yeah, pre-pandemic. The pure rear-wheel drive is 87,400, which is, it sounds crazy to say, but good value, as much as a $87,400 can be.
It's I mean, we were laughing, something was $48,000, and it was like, oh, I have an Alfa Romeo. Yes, my Julia was $48,000, and I'm like, there's Accords that are getting close to that now.
Yeah.
Like everything's
creeping.
Nuts. Yeah.
But our aspiration is to be able to make all of our vehicles more attainable to more people.
Sure.
So we want to be continually increasing our already very good efficiency. That means we can fit smaller battery packs that are lighter, they're cheaper. We can pass on that cost improvement to our customers. So to your question, do we want to offer a 600-mile car? I think we could. I think we have the technology to do it. But what's more attractive to a customer? Is it a 600-mile car that is at a high price, or is it a car with a much smaller battery pack that's lighter, that handles better, that drives better, that is more efficient, more environmentally friendly, and is more financially attainable as well? It's probably going to be that latter one.
Well, let me ask you guys as the vehicle dynamics guys. Given all that you're doing with these motors in fundamentally like heavy cars, like you came from, and I'm pointing at David, you came from JLR, and you were doing Jags, which are the sporty ones are comparatively like lightweights, and then
all aluminum, everything's. Yeah.
Your personal cars, Greg, are S2000, right? Like super light in comparison.
And Model 3, by the way, commendably light for an EV.
Right. Are you excited? Like, what excites you? Is it exciting to think about like a future EV that is significantly lighter than what we have today from a vehicle dynamics standpoint? Or is it all kind of the same because it's batteries and motors?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the current state of the art, right? Like, yeah, they're relatively heavy, but they also mask their weight really well because you've got a big heavy battery, but it's the lowest point in the car. It's centralized in the car. So they handle, it's not like if you had a 5,200-pound gas engined car with a big four-wheel drive system, right? All that mass is really far out. It's over the axles. And so like that's going to punish you really, really hard from a handling standpoint. Relative to the same overall vehicle mass with an electric battery electric powertrain and battery that's really centralized and low. You don't have the yaw inertia, which is, how far away the mass is from the center. The lower that is, the better your turn in is and everything like that. So with that, like, I think they hide their weight really well. And I think if you had a, 3,500 pound electric car, it would be way better than a 3,500 pound gas car.
So you're saying you're a fan of the Cayman that's coming out any day now?
Sure.
In theory.
Yeah.
In theory, it's going to be about 3,500 pounds is what I'm hearing. So.
But yeah, I mean, I think like, pick a number, but I think like an electric car take off 500, 600, 700 pounds will handle like that equivalent weight gas car.
What's the breakthrough that would facilitate that? It's all in the battery, right? Like
solid state battery.
Is there anything that you guys have seen that looks like super promising? We had Mujib Ijaz from Our Next Energy on here. He has a dual
hybrid battery.
Yeah, a dual
two
stage
chemistries
LFP.
in one battery. I'm sure you.
Is it you guys seen anything where you're like, oh, that's gonna? And what would be the first gateway as we go down in weight? Is it 3,000 pounds? And then do you think we'll get to like the holy grail, like a 2,000 pound EV sports car?
No.
Roadster?
Crash safety. There's no way.
2,500 pound? I don't know.
I'll be the first to admit I'm no battery specialist by any means. Okay. I know that we have entire teams dedicated to it and working feverishly on it because, as we've all said, it is the heaviest part of an EV right now. So in terms of the knob or dial that's going to have the largest effect on the vehicle, it's the battery from a mass perspective. I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. I think we've done a pretty good job, and many OEMs have done a pretty good job today of hiding the mass. There are always some concessions that come with that, but I think we're pretty proud of what we've achieved. But yeah, I'm excited to see what comes in the future. If we can lop a couple of 100 pounds or kilos out of that thing.
So you're talking hundreds, not thousands. Greg?
But wouldn't the, from my understanding, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on what kind of car you're trying to make, right? If you're making a Miata, it's a smaller car. It's going to weigh a lot less than a 5-seat luxury sedan.
But the footprint would require, if you wanted to make a Miata, you might not be able to get the range and everything you want out of that package size, right? Unless something happens fundamentally with the battery.
Yeah, I mean, you might not be able to package it's a really short wheelbase, right? Yep. So you don't have as much room for batteries, but maybe you put some batteries in the under the hood, right?
But like my understanding with the promise of solid state battery technologies, it really would be a paradigm shift in terms of weight. Like if you could do a solid state battery, you could go down like 80% or something like that. That would
be nuts.
Yeah, that's why everyone's working. That's where billions of dollars are being poured into battery development, right? You know, you guys haven't probably not. I don't know.
Neither of us are really battery people, honestly.
Got it. Okay.
No.
Well, let me ask this then, because so for David, maybe specifically, but also I'm assuming even though you've only been at Tesla and Lucid, you thought about worked on some cars that had gasoline engines at some point in your life. What's one this EVs are so much better as something as a vehicle to work on, and then what besides weight, what's worse about them? I've always been curious about this because they are different, but it does seem that people are able to like I was just talking about this morning. Al Oppenheiser, he was the chief engineer of Camaro, and then he did the Hummer. You know, and it's like
Hummer EV.
Hummer EV, yeah. So
that's quite a transition. Yeah.
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 But so you've done this transition. What was your big eye opener, and what was your one thing you miss? I guess.
I think the advantageous stuff. It's power and torque delivery, and the instantaneous nature of it, and just how much of it there is. It's just awe-inspiring. Sometimes we have to pinch ourselves to remind ourselves that we're awake and this is real. That we're driving a officially north of 1,200 horsepower Sapphire around, and this is the car with hypercar level of performance. And it seats 5 in comfort with massaged seats and all this ridiculousness that there are so few cars that do all of that in one package.
Right.
And I think you could not do that with a combustion engine because the engine itself would be huge. The thermal requirements on that thing would take up so much more space. You wouldn't have any interior space left. But it's been fascinating and kind of inspiring to get to work with that stuff. The difficult parts, I think for us, it's been because we're a new company and the Air is our first car. We've had to do all this stuff from scratch.
Right.
I left JLR when the I-Pace was at kind of M1 going into VP stage, so still fairly early prototypes. So I didn't get to see a lot of the goings-ons there through the development. And I've still got friends there, and I'll check in with them, and we'll chat about some stuff. But really, kind of, I experienced it for the first time. I experienced an EV development for the first time at Lucid, as did most people on the team. And we had these. We kind of knew where we were. We knew where we needed to get to. We had no idea how the hell we were going to do the bit in the middle. And a lot of it was we had to create things that just didn't exist. Like all of our controls, we wrote from scratch. And we kind of sat down and said, well, what do we want a car to do? How do we think a car should behave? Okay, what are the physical elements that we need to be able to manipulate to achieve certain behaviors? Then how do we do that in controls? How should the software be structured to do that? And that is a huge undertaking that I think it's not apparent to most people and not to our customers. They see the kind of polished end product. There was so many years of hard work,
and that raises a lot of great points because Ed is going to start mentioning software-defined vehicles.
Yes,
but also I was shocked when we had a long talk one time that you'd been there at Lucid for a long time. It was I thought Lucid just appeared. It was no, I've been there for 6.5 years. I'm like, really? To get one car done, that's
7 years, 7 months.
Yeah. Well, no, this is a year
I
ago.
know.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying usually a car, it's 4 years, and then with EVs, you can kind of do it in 3 years or 2 years because there's less development time. But it's wow, you guys were really at it for a while.
Yeah, that's an interesting story in itself because it's no secret we didn't have the smoothest road to getting to having a car in production. I joined in 2015. I think the team was at about 100 people at that point. And as most startups do, we had money for a certain runway, and we knew we needed to bring in more funding, hit certain milestones, bring in more funding, and then repeat the cycle. And we had a pretty rough time of it, and we nearly ran out of money several times in the early days.
And COVID hit.
Yeah, and then we secured the funding, and we said, great, we're solid now. We have everything we need to do this. Let's go. And then COVID hit. And then we had to develop a car in the middle of a pandemic, the likes of which the world had never seen before.
Right.
So yeah, it was it wasn't easy. So I think. And the other point I was going to make was when we had our kind of dark days where we didn't know where we were from a funding situation, we had to slow down quite a lot, and we stopped external spend. We kept people on internally, but we stopped external spend. And then when we secured the funding and we said, right, it's go time, we said it's imperative here we revisit every decision we've ever made and make sure it's the right one. Because if we just continue on the path we were on, we may have been outdated by the time we launched. And in fact, we changed many things. We changed from a 400-something volt architecture to a 900-something. We changed to a permanent magnet motor setup. We redesigned our front and rear suspension completely. All our hard points are different. All of our tuning is different. We removed air suspension and went to coil because we thought it was better. And the list goes on. So to your point, this wasn't actually a 7.5-year vehicle development. It was about a 3-year vehicle development in a pandemic.
Right.
Because we really started again in 2019-ish, I think it was, and just changed so much stuff for the better.
Just because you brought it up,
that's wild. Yeah,
you guys are the 900 volt architecture.
912.
Does it? Do you guys allow for 350 kilowatt charging yet?
I think we say 300. Is it 350?
I thought it was 350.
Yeah, we've certainly seen north of 300.
Yeah.
I was going to say I saw 342 for 19 minutes straight.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah.
This is a question from Christian Seabuck.
That was an Electrify America charger. I was the only one there.
That's why.
And we but it was like it was
splits charge.
Yeah, but it was crazy. I was just like, whoa, that doesn't look right. It was like really fast, and then I walked away and came back, and it was like added like 200 miles of range in like 19 minutes or something.
Yeah, we can add. If you have a pretty depleted pack, we can add over 300 miles of range in 21 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I was probably like at 160 miles left of a 460 mile thing.
Yeah.
So you guys are in a better place. That was fundamentally what you're talking about. You made it through the woods. You got the cars out. We're launching high performance stuff. In the last couple of years, though, another rival has emerged out of China called BYD. Do you guys? What keeps you up? Leading question. What keeps you up at night? Is you guys looking at all at what's happening in China? Does it freak you out? The context for me is two things. One, I don't know. I keep referencing this article. I have to go find it and share it with our team. But I read an article that it's about the future that I had never considered. I think about this stuff a lot, but I'd never considered a future where China goes, you know what? We good. We don't need your American brands. Like,
that's happening right now.
Like,
forget about American.
Your Ford,
like German.
Your Ford, your GM, your mass market EV brands. Yeah. First of all, our software defined experience blows your socks off. You can't do Chinese language voice control. I don't got a little fancy bobblehead assistant in the car. I can't watch all my cool Chinese soap operas. Get out of here. I think they will still lust after traditional Western luxury brands across the board, from Louis Vuitton or Hermes, right, all the way to your Bentleys, your Rolls Royces. But when they have a strong, obviously a strong, huge consumer base that everybody wants to get after. There's no nostalgia for American automotive brands because we largely haven't been there except for Buick. They remember Buick.
Shen Kai-shek drove a Buick.
Right, so they remember that. That's cool. But I had never imagined this future, and I always assumed Americans are going to get their poop together, and we'll
but also
it out.
Germans. Don't forget, like Audi.
I actually think the luxury brands again are in a slightly better position. And then the other thing I saw, which blew my mind, was this BYD U8 SUV. I don't know if you guys have seen this clip. Forget your Hummer or your Rivian tank turn or crab walk. This U8 It drives the motors on the front and rear axle, the wheels backwards, and it can scurry. It can basically move across the screen, like it moved across the stage, like sideways, like fully sideways. And this is the level. It's a flex.
It picked up wheels. Yeah.
No, it was literally like counter rotating and allowed corkscrews and allowed it to go 90, like just like 180 degrees, whatever. Like it was wild. There's a clip. There's all sorts of clips on YouTube. So. That is a long ass intro to like China giving you sleepless nights, or you guys look over there and say, "That's scary, interesting."
We we keep tabs on everything. We've got a very good product planning team who monitors all of this stuff. We're all enthusiasts and interested in the future of Lucid ourselves, so we all keep tabs on it. And I think it would be arrogant of us to not do so. We need to be aware of the threats coming from everywhere, and we can't arrogantly assume, oh, we're a US innovative EV brand, therefore we're going to be okay. I do think we are going to be okay and do very well, but through kind of diligence and taking threats seriously and ensuring that we have the best product. Lots of the Chinese OEMs are innovating incredibly quickly, and we have several Chinese members of our team who kind of keep tabs for us on this stuff as well, of our local chassis and dynamics team. And their feedback is that they have crazy short development times, really, really aggressive timelines. So I guess for your long-ass intro, this is my long-ass way of saying we are monitoring it and we take it seriously.
Are you able to benchmark any of their cars? Or do you have a...
Or do they matter?
I think they matter. Yeah, I think everything matters. We've driven the Zeekr something, I forget the name, extensively. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for its price point and for what it's trying to do. It's pretty good. So, yeah, I think everybody needs to take these things seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth, benchmarking everybody, right? Like, we're in a big transition from, fundamentally the same car that's been there for 100 years. And all the different companies, whether it's from China or Germany or, the US, whatever, everybody is coming at it in a slightly different way. Mm-hmm. You've got some companies that are really trying to emulate their gas cars with an electric powertrain and make it so that you don't know that you're in an electric car for all intents and purposes. That's one way of doing it. You can say, like, okay, it doesn't have a torque converter, it shouldn't have creep motor, whatever, right? Like, right. Everybody's trying to figure out what an electric car should look like, right? And I think that you can have really good ideas coming from anywhere, right? If it's a really good idea, I don't care if it's from China or Germany or the US or whatever. And I think, like, over the next maybe 15 years, what an electric car should look like will start to kind of, that jello will start to set in terms of, like, what the typical customer expects from the driving experience, whether that's powertrain or chassis or infotainment, whatever it is. But I think, there's a lot of innovation going on right now, and you kind of have to look at everything because anything could be the next big thing.
Yeah, my only thing I ever say about Chinese cars is I'd like to see some crash test results because I've been.
How dare you?
What do you mean? How dare I? I haven't seen it. Safe. What do you mean? Of course they're going to be safe. I've been in some Chinese cars in China. Like, let me tell you what they weren't safe.
There's some good stuff on YouTube. I think it was Landwind did a rip-off of the Range Rover Evoque.
Okay,
there's some good crash tests on YouTube. You should check them out.
Yeah, that's my only thing. That's my big concern is, like, that's why I said, do they matter? More like, boy, where you don't have, like, lawsuits in a country, why bother making them safe? So
yeah, but I mean that's one brand, and we certainly aren't making the assumption that all Chinese OEMs are going to be doing that. I think a lot of them are very, very good and need to be taken very seriously.
Yeah, a lot of them are coming for the U.S. market and the EU market and everything. So they'll have to comply with all the same regulations that everybody else does.
And I'll remind you that everybody who's watching us on a screen, big or small, or listening to us via their phone, it's on a device made in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Period.
Let me see some crash tests.
All right.
You don't have to crash test a phone.
Well, Greg, just before when you were at Tesla, did you guys benchmark anything from that was sent over in a shipping container from another country?
From China.
Did you guys do any? Did you do any kind of competitive benchmarking of international vehicles at all, like that way, or no? It's all that. I guess they would have had a team do that over there, right, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember specifically a Chinese vehicle, but yeah, I mean, I've worked on cars that go to China and everything, and I think all of the cars are potentially good, right? It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's just there's really good cars and there's not as good cars, and those come from everywhere, really.
When you
Okay.
when you started that, I thought you were going to say, "I don't remember anything." There was a Men in Black. There was a Men in Black moment.
I don't have. I mean, I have one funny story that I just learned of this because I have my head in a bucket most days.
He
Zach,
does.
Zach, our guy who's taken over on our Lucid Air. Apparently, he told me he asked me whether he can start expensing mobile car washes because our Lucid, the wheels have gotten scuffed up a lot in car washes because the aggressive fit and the low profile tire and the aggressive face on the wheels. He literally said the car wash attendant called him back. Could the owner of the Lucid please come back and asked him whether he'd be comfortable driving the car into the car wash because the attendant did not want to take responsibility for what might happen if it missed the wheel guide. Apparently, our Lucid's 3 of the wheels are scuffed to hell.
Don't blame it on a car wash.
Well, surely it's not our crack drivers.
Oh, yeah.
Is this any of this resonate? Or you guys are like, what are you talking about? Like,
I've not heard that one.
Yeah, can I tell you what's going on there? The car wash guys hate EVs because the keys never work right if you walk away with your phone. Like, I have to leave my phone in the Rivian to go through the car wash because they can never get the keys to work. Mm-hmm. They hate EVs. Not because of wheel fitment. They hate EVs.
I was going to applaud the wheel fit because it is a nice. It's
nothing,
you guys. It's unlike a lot of luxury. Some of
No.
manufacturers where you filled the wheel well.
No, they meet a legal requirement just like everybody else. No, it's. I'm telling. Zach got it wrong. It's scuffed up because Frank or whoever in Detroit smashed it into things, and car wash dudes and gals hate EVs.
We're going to air our dirty laundry like that. I just said go pull into the touchless one where the machine moves around the car. You're done. Problem solved. So
Yeah, because they don't really get them clean.
well, it's a different story.
Yeah.
Okay. Look. This was awesome. I don't know. Do you have any last?
I can keep going forever. Can you tell us anything about
Gravity?
Gravity? Because my question, and I know you guys aren't the right ones to ask, was should you have launched with an SUV as opposed to a sedan?
Fisker. Look at Fisker. Fisker's coming out with a low end, a affordable EV.
Well, forget about affordable. Just an SUV. We're in a market in a country that loves SUVs. Yes. Everything's a stupid SUV. Like, should you?
But I think the sedan, so the Air in particular, with its very low coefficient of drag and very low frontal area,
right?
It's the perfect demonstration of our efficiency and our technology. And we always knew that the sedan market is not as big as the SUV market. That's no secret.
So you guys were aware of that as well.
We had noticed. We'd done our sums,
right?
And we said it's important for us to launch a first product where our volume is relatively low, so we can make sure our quality is right, and we can ramp up production at a kind of organic, gradual rate, so that we can ensure the quality stays right. We can demonstrate our technology. Highlight our efficiency advantage, and then we move on to the SUV, and we use all of those kind of values and virtues that we demonstrated on the sedan. We now show what it can do on an SUV.
Right. It's funny that, like, I had this, you mentioned when we were at Laguna Seca way back when. I remember I had a nice lunch with Peter, and he did say the word efficiency even more than you've said it, like about 7,000 times. And I'm like, that's just so unsexy. Like, how do you...
Efficiency is sexy. Come on.
Not to someone buying a car. Like, that's a ninth consideration.
I mean, it affects everything, though, right? Like,
I agree with all that. I'm just saying from a marketing point of view, like, efficient.
Yeah, but it's like, the more efficient your car is, the faster you charge, right? Mm-hmm. For a given amount of energy that goes in the pack, you get more miles. Mm-hmm. You get to go further on a given pack size. It makes the car, more affordable and everything. So it is really important.
And
I agree with all that. I understand all that. I'm just saying, like, because it came up because I was asking Peter. At the time you hadn't announced the Dream Edition horsepower, but it had been announced it was going to be in the 4-figure range. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, and he goes, no, but you don't understand it. That only occurs because we're so efficient. Mm-hmm. That's how our motors can make so much power. And I was like, asking about range. He goes, it doesn't matter about range and it doesn't matter about torque and just efficiency. I go, no one wants to read about efficiency.
Let me ask the question that he's been asking a different way, because that's actually Zach, my guy, asked me a bunch, like, ask about Gravity. But we talked all about Rivian. He's talks a ton about Rivian. I've always
Nice truck.
I've given them a hard time, but I think they over-indexed on the off-road capability of that truck. I'm like, that's awesome. It's so great. It's good off-road. Nobody cares. Like, this is a truck.
Except for everybody who off-roads them. But
Which is of the truck buying market is a very small percentage. Just like focusing on towing or hauling. These are mostly air haulers, air towers. Okay. Gravity is an SUV. Are you guys focusing more on the S or the U? Like, is it going to be like the sportiest? You guys are a luxury brand, so I expect there'll be some level of premiumness to it that you're going to deliver on. But is this fundamentally like basically an on-road or off-road experience that you guys in particular are going to be working on delivering?
We haven't said too much publicly yet, so I need to be careful what I say here. But
break some news. Let's go.
I'm looking at Andrew now.
Andrew's getting his taser ready. Yeah.
It is going to be kind of there's a lot of what we did in the Air going into the Gravity. So the kind of the ride and handling attributes will be similar. We want this to wow people with how well an SUV can handle. We are benchmarking the best handling SUVs out there.
Which ones?
Porsche Cayenne, GTS, Aston Martin DBX, others.
Did you drive that
Urus?
We've driven Urus. We've driven lots of Range Rovers.
X6M?
Barf?
Not that
what do you
one
mean
in
barf?
particular. But X7, we've looked at a lot for.
Also barf.
But
Yeah,
for comfort,
Oh,
very
okay.
comfortable.
Just don't do that seat package. That the mechanics in those seats are terrible. It's a button and you have to wait for everything.
When I drove,
Levers, like spring-loaded stuff. Like I know. Anyways, okay.
When I drove the Urus the first time, I drove like an early development one. It was about 95% done. And I was talking with, at the time, Regione was the, whatever he was, vice president of stuff at Lamborghini. And I was like, what'd you benchmark? And he smiles, he goes, all of them. He goes, what's your favorite one? I go, well, the best handling SUV I've ever, at the time, was the X6M. And he smiles real big. He goes, yeah, that was our favorite too. So I think X6M, as far as handling goes, excellent.
Yeah.
So
strangely, my Uber on the way to Beverly Hills last night was an X6 M60, I think it was. Very unusual for an Uber, but yeah, pretty good.
not in LA. You get all kinds of. I've been in some like very high. I'm like, really? Why are you Ubering this?
Did you do that? What was it? We had a best performance vehicle of the year. The turbo, the
Cayenne GT?
The Cayenne GT. Did you drive one of those?
I've not driven a GT.
Okay,
That's
driven
an
GTS.
It's an Urus. Yeah.
okay.
But yeah, it's a very competitive field for sure.
Suddenly,
So it's Gravity is going to have to be good to stand out, and it will be.
And I assume Model X. You've driven a Model X.
Yeah, we've driven one.
Okay.
We've driven one. But then the other big thing, the other two core tenets of Gravity is efficiency. Again, that sexy concept I know you love, Johnny.
I'm just saying it's a hard sell. Trying to write about efficiency.
Yeah. But I think we're moving past the kind of profligate era of V8s, V10s, V12s, where that's sexy. Like a screaming V12 is sexy, but I think particularly newer generations, and I think all of us really should be moving on from that stuff because the planet isn't going to take that much more of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was what was I in yesterday? Raptor R.
Yeah.
And fun, loud truck, all that stuff. 8.1 miles per gallon.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Greg and I are both, and most of our team are performance car lovers.
Sure.
But we also feel kind of socially responsible and environmentally responsible.
Yeah.
But then the other core tenet is space as well, interior space and this space concept. Like we did on the Air, we miniaturize everything. We really heavily focus on.
That's a good point. So
packaging.
if people aren't familiar with Lucid, Peter, your CEO, famously brings your motors in a rollerboard.
Yeah.
And so by having these tiny motors, you really free up a ton of interior packaging.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fantastic.
And that'll be, I assume, magnified on an SUV.
Yeah.
Because
larger package.
Yeah. If we have the same or very similar drive units, and you have a bigger volume to play with by virtue of it being an SUV, you've suddenly got this huge interior space. But yeah, that's something that I think has kind of really stood us apart. We are if you compare a Lucid Air to a Mercedes S-Class, we're 10, 11, 12 inches shorter, but we have more interior space than the S-Class, which is just bonkers.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of
especially the one. I forget what you call it. Not the touring. The one with the battery packs missing.
Yeah, touring
touring?
And the Pure have the smaller battery packs, so your heels are about 2 inches lower,
and that's wild. Yeah, that's that was a really cool back seat.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that we can write about in magazines and YouTube and whatever, but people have got to experience it to really believe it. But it's
So it sounds like no off-road focus, or
not saying no off-road, but I think maybe we don't go as far as Rivian.
Okay.
But yeah, we're not saying no.
Can you say,
just for the record, it's absolutely the right approach. So the S,
unless you want to compete with Rivian
on road.
But what about, would there be a Sapphire variant of the Gravity?
We'll have to see.
Andrew, could you go to the restroom for a few minutes?
Or let's try Greg. What do you think, Greg? Will there be a Sapphire?
Yeah.
What was the line?
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
Okay,
right.
okay, very good.
Well, my laptop just died. That means it's
that's a first.
That's the first.
Wow. Okay. So we've talked a long time.
Should have been more efficient.
Exactly. So,
or a bigger battery.
Right.
All right. Well, that was fun. That was good.
Yes. Look, thank you so much for making the special trip out here. You guys all sat on a plane to do this. I hope it was worth your time. Certainly it was worth ours. Learned a lot. You gave us just enough on Gravity. We're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to spending more time with your vehicles. I haven't had as much time as this guy. But David and Greg, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
for having us.
Appreciate it.
That was great. Thank you.